The message arrived just after breakfast, when the sunlight was pouring through the kitchen window and 8-year-old Theo was trying to balance a spoon on his nose. His father, Marcus, barely glanced at his phone before reading the words that would change his entire day. His sister had arranged a blind date for him that afternoon. Marcus almost laughed out loud. A blind date for a tired single father who measured his life in school pickups, grocery lists, unpaid bills, and bedtime stories? He assumed it was another one of his sister's pranks, something designed to pull him out of the quiet life he had accepted. But by 2 o'clock, when he walked into the little garden cafe downtown and saw the woman standing beneath the flowering trees, his smile disappeared. He realized she was real, and somehow, she was waiting for him. If you believe that kindness can heal broken hearts and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Enlightened Story. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Marcus had become a single father 3 years earlier, and life had taught him not to expect much for himself. His daughter had passed away when she was still a baby, and his marriage had slowly collapsed under the weight of grief. Neither he nor his former wife knew how to carry it. Their separation had been painful, but Marcus never blamed anyone. He simply focused on raising Theo, the little boy who had become the brightest part of his world. Marcus worked as a maintenance supervisor at a local hospital, often taking extra shifts whenever the bills became difficult. His clothes were clean but ordinary. His old car had a stubborn engine, and his idea of luxury was buying Theo an extra scoop of ice cream after a good report card. Romance had become something he watched in movies rather than something he imagined for himself. His sister Nora refused to accept that. She had spent months insisting that Marcus deserved happiness too, but he always found an excuse. That morning, she had promised that the woman she was introducing him to was kind, patient, and completely uninterested in money or appearances. Marcus still believed the whole thing was a prank until he saw her. Her name was Vivian, though everyone called her Vivi. She stood near the cafe entrance in a simple cream-colored dress, holding a small notebook against her chest. There was nothing flashy about her. No expensive jewelry, no dramatic entrance, no attempt to impress anyone. She simply looked calm, almost nervous, as though she had been gathering courage to meet him too. Marcus nearly turned around. He suddenly felt embarrassed by his worn shoes and the faint grease stain on his work jacket. But then Vivi noticed him, smiled gently, and walked toward his table. Something about her expression made him stay. Their first hour together was surprisingly easy. She did not interrogate him about his divorce or ask why he was raising a child alone. Instead, she listened when he talked about Theo's obsession with dinosaurs and smiled when he described the boy's habit of leaving toy animals all over the house. Marcus slowly realized she was not trying to impress him. She was trying to understand him. Then came the moment that changed everything. As they finished lunch, Marcus received a call from Theo's school. His son had fallen during recess and hurt his ankle. The teacher assured him it was probably nothing serious, but Marcus immediately stood up, his face filled with panic. He apologized to Vivi and prepared to leave, expecting disappointment. Instead, she quietly gathered her things and followed him to the parking lot. She did not ask whether she should come. She simply offered to drive, because Marcus's old car had been making strange noises all week. At the school, they found Theo sitting in the nurse's office with tears on his cheeks. The moment he saw his father, he reached for him. Marcus knelt beside him, checked his ankle, and promised everything would be okay. Vivi remained several steps away, giving them space, but Theo noticed her and became curious. He asked who she was. Marcus struggled to explain, but Vivi smiled and introduced herself as someone who had met his father for lunch. Theo studied her for a moment before asking if she liked dinosaurs. When she admitted she knew almost nothing about them, he immediately began explaining the difference between a Tyrannosaurus and a Triceratops. For the first time that day, Marcus laughed without forcing it. Vivi laughed too, and somehow the school nurse's small office felt warmer. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Vivi never tried to replace anyone. She never demanded Marcus's attention or complained when Theo came first. She simply became part of their ordinary days. Sometimes she brought books for Theo. Sometimes she helped Marcus carry groceries. Once, when Marcus was working late, she left a homemade meal on his porch with a note saying that even strong fathers deserve dinner before midnight. Marcus began to fall in love with her, but fear kept pulling him backward. He had already lost too much once. He was terrified of giving his heart to someone and watching another beautiful thing disappear. Vivi sensed his hesitation but never pressured him. Then, one bright Saturday afternoon, Marcus found Vivi sitting on the porch with Theo, helping him build a wooden model airplane. Sunlight covered the yard in gold. Birds sang from the trees, and Theo was laughing so hard he could barely hold the pieces. Marcus stood there silently, realizing that this was the kind of happiness he had stopped believing existed. Vivi looked up and smiled at him. There was no grand speech, no perfect moment, just a quiet understanding between two people who had both survived difficult chapters. Marcus finally understood that love did not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrived carrying groceries. Sometimes it sat beside you while your child talked about dinosaurs. Sometimes it waited patiently while you learned how to trust again. Months later, Marcus returned to the same garden cafe where their first meeting had happened. The flowering trees were blooming again. This time, he was not nervous. Theo sat beside him, proudly wearing a small bow tie because he had decided the occasion was important. Vivi arrived carrying the same little notebook she had held on their first date. Marcus smiled when he saw her because he remembered how close he had come to walking away that afternoon. He had once believed the blind date was a prank. Now he understood that it had been the beginning of a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that love can find us even after heartbreak, and subscribe to Enlightened Story for more emotional stories of hope, kindness, and second chances. And before you leave, please comment, second chances are real, if you believe that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin when we least expect them. Because Marcus learned something that day that he would never forget. A broken heart does not mean a broken future. Sometimes all it takes is one unexpected meeting, one patient person, and one brave decision to open the door again. And beneath the warm afternoon sun, surrounded by the people he loved most, Marcus finally stopped looking backward and began walking toward the life he had once thought he could never have.